it can end up getting transferred to them. And, you definitely don't want your girlfriend growing a beard. Also, because you need to. What's going on, guys? In this next video of the TRT series, I'm going to talk about how to dial in your dose and find your individual sweet spot. And if you've not seen it, check out my last video all about how to determine whether you need TRT or not. To kick things off then, I'll say that it's quite rare that your first TRT protocol will be the one that you stick with. And for most guys, there's going to be a period of trial and error where you're adjusting the dose, maybe the administration frequency, and even for some guys, the testosterone ester itself. Now, the dosage of testosterone itself can actually vary a lot. And I've seen it from as low as 80 milligrams per week to as high as 250 milligrams a week, depending on the individual. So what actually determines the dosage you should use then? Well, it should be the minimum amount possible to get relief from symptoms of low testosterone with as few or none of the potential side effects as possible. And I'll talk about the potential side effects of dosing too high later on. The reason, guys, dosage varies so much is because everyone's different. We all have individual genetics, we all have different receptors, and it's the same with a lot of things in life. Everybody responds differently, and testosterone is certainly no different. The way you metabolize testosterone can be impacted by age, genetics, the carrier oil of the testosterone itself, lifestyle, and even body fat levels. And I will say that physically active people have more androgen receptors to put the exogenous testosterone to use. So with all that being said, how do you do it? You've got your testosterone in your hand. What do you do next? How do you find your individual dose? Now, I recommend that guys start at 100 milligrams per week. And for most, this will put their total levels between 600 nanograms and 1,100 nanograms per week, which is between the middle and the high end of normal, if not borderline superphysiological on the reference range. But even more importantly, with a much higher proportional free testosterone. This is because exogenous testosterone use lowers SHBG. Now, for some guys, 100 milligrams per week will be enough to treat hypergonadism and get symptom relief. However, if you don't get symptom relief or just partial relief, or even if you're just wondering could I get more benefit from going a little bit higher, what you can do is increase the dose further, slowly and in stages. Every time you bump the dose up, wait 6 weeks before doing it again. This is so that total serum concentration levels can stabilize and you can feel the full effects of that amount of testosterone in your system. This applies to the longer esters of testosterone, so enanthate and cypionate. For propionate, the waiting period is much shorter and you could adjust the dose every 2 weeks. So here's an example of how you would go about adjusting dosage and finding your sweet spot with TRT's most common esters, enanthate and cypionate. So first thing to do is get a diary or even an Excel spreadsheet, and at the end of every week, score how you feel mood-wise, libido-wise, and energy-wise out of 10. The reason to do this is because it'll serve a great reference point to go back and look at as you change the dose. So you're starting with 100 milligrams per week, wait 6 weeks, assess how you feel. So let's say your symptoms have improved. You can increase the dose by 20 milligrams. So now you're on 120 milligrams per week. So you would wait another 6 weeks and reassess. Maybe you get further symptom relief with 120. You can increase your dose by 20 milligrams again and then wait another 6 weeks. At this stage, you could be feeling great. So bump it up a bit more, taking it to 160 milligrams per week. Now for this example, let's say on 160 milligrams, you start getting high estrogen issues. Maybe your mood and libido start to become a bit more unstable. So guess what? 140 milligrams is the highest you can go before running into those issues while getting the maximum benefit in terms of symptom relief. Now, using the shorter ester, propionate, would follow the same process, but it would just allow you to alter the dose more frequently. And instead of every 6 weeks with the enanthate or cypionate esters, you could change the dose every 2 weeks. So if you don't mind doing daily shots, that's one of the key benefits of propionate. So that's how you go about finding your sweet spot on TRT. And remember, if you're using testosterone to treat hypergonadism, then your primary goal should be symptom relief and an improved quality of life. So ideally, you want to use as little as possible to achieve that result, which takes me to my next point. More isn't always better. Now, of course, higher testosterone has many benefits, including enhanced athletic performance, decreased recovery time from workouts, and making it easier to improve body composition. But it also comes with some drawbacks that you need to be aware of. The first and probably the most important thing to look out for is blood pressure. Now, generally, the higher your testosterone dose, the more likely it is that you'll run into blood pressure issues. This is because testosterone also increases a hormone called aldosterone, which is made in your adrenal gland and is responsible for mineral and water retention. Now, that actually sounds quite good, right? You know, it puts your body in a more anabolic environment, so it's going to have an easier time growing muscle. The problem is if you have an overactivity in this system, which is known as the RAS, or the renin angiotensin aldosterone system, it makes your kidneys work harder. Over time, this increases blood pressure and resting heart rate, leading to left ventricular hypertrophy. This increases the risk of strokes and heart disease. Things like omega-3 fish oil, daily cardio, and in some cases an ARB, which is an angiotensin receptor blocker, like telmisartan, can mitigate some of the risks and keep aldosterone and blood pressure under control. The next issue you're likely to run into by using too much testosterone is excessive estrogen. This is because a portion of that testosterone is getting converted to estrogen via aromatase. Now, in a perfect world on TRT, you won't need any form of estrogen control, and that's what you should really be aiming for. But everyone's different, and we all convert testosterone to estrogen at different rates. Now, I've heard some guys able to take up to 300 milligrams of testosterone a week without running into estrogen issues, but these are certainly outliers and what we would call low aromatizers. Now, for me, if I go over about 175 milligrams per week, my estrogen starts to creep up. And the way I can tell is because I start getting water retention. My weight on the scale will start to shoot up. And that's without any major changes to diet, cardio, or total calories. The weight will just start going up. And for me, that's like the canary in the coal mine that I can use to tell that my estrogen is getting a little bit high. And it could become problematic if I don't address it. Now, if I wasn't to touch it, I'd start getting acne popping up. My nipples would probably start getting sore, and my mood and libido would become unstable. In my next video, I'm going to talk all about estrogen management, what to look out for, and what you can do to keep it under control. So look out for that one. So just to touch on administration and frequency then. The most common way to administer testosterone is via injection. And I actually knew a guy that put TRT off for years because he was scared to inject himself. So he suffered years of a lower quality of life just because he couldn't get past this one hurdle. And I'll talk about that real quick. Doing injections is one of those things where it seems scary until you actually do it. And then when you do it for the first time, you're like, oh, wow, I can't believe it was that easy all along. And I was so scared. You can use a 29 gauge insulin pin and go subcutaneous or shallow intramuscular. And I'll just show you what that looks like. I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up. Hopefully you can see that. But the needle is absolutely tiny. And I would say 90% of the time, you don't even feel it. And when you do feel it, it's like a 1 out of 10 on the pain scale. So really, if you can just get past the mental hurdle of doing it, it's no big deal at all. It's completely painless. It's not like using one of those giant like harpoon needles, which you've probably got some mental image of in your head. It's really not like that, and it's so much easier than what you think. So ideally, testosterone is shot daily. And that's just to keep serum concentration levels as stable as possible and avoid those wild peaks and troughs, which can be responsible for some side effects, which I'll talk about. But if you really hate injections, then twice a week's fine on the longer esters, so enanthate and cypionate. So these peaks and troughs can cause estrogen to spike because all of a sudden you get a spike of testosterone, and that's followed by a spike of aromatization, which is like a flood of estrogen into your system all at once, which could result in estrogen issues that otherwise could have been avoided by doing daily shots. And just another point on daily shots, if you don't mind doing them, then you can use testosterone propionate for TRT. And anecdotally, some guys report that they feel better on propionate in the libido and mood department. So if you don't mind doing daily shots, you might want to check that out. Now, I did try doing propionate myself for a while after reading so many reports of guys using it and saying they had good results. And I think I did notice a difference. It's one of those things where if you're expecting it to happen, you kind of manifest it in a way. So I don't know how much placebo effect was going on there. You'd have to test it for yourself and see if you notice a difference. Cream's another option, I guess, but I don't recommend it really, especially if you have a partner and kids. You know, it can end up getting transferred to them, and you know, you definitely don't want your girlfriend growing a beard. Also, because you need to apply it multiple times a day to your genitals, it can take a bit of the spontaneity out of sex. For example, if you're both in the mood and ready to go, and then it's like, oh shit, I've got testosterone cream all over my dick. Like, sorry, you gotta wait, buddy, because it's not happening. All right, I think that's everything, guys. If you want me to go into more detail about anything that I've mentioned, let me know in the comments. And aside from that, thanks for watching. Enhancedplayer.com's the blog. Bye for now.